Today on Tricrow Studios, we talk about Les Pauls, Les Pauls, Les Pauls, Les Pauls, Les Pauls. Comment below whether or not you think this counts. Les Pauls, and should you buy one? Very quickly, I do want to note that in this video I'm using Gibson Les Pauls. It doesn't matter whether you want to buy a Gibson Les Paul or an Epiphone Les Paul. The video should still transfer over and translate properly. The first thing I want to talk about is weight. So basically you have the non-weight relieved Les Paul and the weight relieved Les Paul. It really depends on preference as to what you'd want to get. But let's quickly go over what they are. Here we have a non-weight relieved Les Paul Custom. While there is a tiny bit of chambering in it, it shaves off maybe half a pound at the most. But the benefits of the non-weight relief would be resonance and sustain. And this is personal, but it feels a lot smoother when you're playing with a non-weight relieved Les Paul versus feels like you're digging in with a weight relieved Les Paul. But again, that could just be personal preference. The downside to this, or the plus side, whichever one, this can destroy your back if you're standing up and playing. There are times when you're actually sitting down and playing, and it can actually have a small effect on your back. These are heavy, heavy guitars. This is a weight relieved Les Paul Studio. The weight relief on Les Pauls can vary. There's the 9-hole weight relief system, which relieves the weight a little bit. Some say it's not as noticeable, and there's still some good weight to it. There's also the modern and ultra modern. I believe the ultra modern is the one that has like 1 million holes in it. I only own this one for a weight relieved Les Paul, and personally I find that there's definitely a great deal of difference when you're sitting down or standing up. Your back is not destroyed, but at the same time I feel that when you're playing it, it feels like you're digging in when you shouldn't be. Again, that's personal preference. The weight relief system is supposed to be designed to maintain resonance and sustain. That's again up to personal preference, what you feel. It doesn't matter which one you prefer, just know that there is a difference in them. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Les Paul Special Series. So this is a special DC, so that means double cut. You can kind of see, it doesn't have the little thingy here. You can get the ones with the little thingy here, the traditional Les Paul shape. Basically, it is a slab mahogany body. There's no carved top. You can get the DC with a carved top as well. However, with the Special Series, you cannot, or you don't. These are kind of like, I find they're kind of best of both worlds. They're kind of in between. They are not weight relieved because it's just a slab of mahogany. It's not as light as the ultra weight relief Les Paul, and obviously not nearly as heavy as say like a 9 or 11 pound Les Paul. Next up, let's talk about neck profiles. So basically, as I have 2 Les Pauls here, there's 3 different type of neck profiles. You have the baseball bat, and you have the medium C. So hopefully I'm going to be smart enough to do a close-up. And then you have the slim taper neck. Now I do find there's a little bit of a variance in the slim taper, and this could just be me being crazy, but on the Les Paul Classic, the slim taper feels a little different than on the Les Paul Studios that I've played and owned. Feels like the Studio is slightly wider, if that makes any sense. It doesn't feel as comfortable. But again, it's all to personal preference. But the baseball bat, as it were, is huge. When I first got this guitar, I thought it was the greatest neck ever invented. Still feel that it's an awesome neck. But then I got the like medium or medium C, I believe it is, in the Les Paul Custom. So that's obviously not as fat, and it's super comfortable. Both of these are non-weight relief Les Pauls, and they feel great. The slim taper neck, I highly recommend in a non-weight relief Les Paul. I prefer the non-weight relief. I just find that there's more balance, and the necks sort of feel hollow on the Les Paul Studios. But that's, again, just personal preference. Now I want to talk about pickups. There's a large group of people out there that think of Les Pauls and only think that there's Les Pauls with humbuckers. They actually originated with P90 pickups. Then, after P90s were out for quite a while, they discovered that the Epiphone Mini humbuckers fit perfectly in the, well, didn't fit perfectly, they made a thing, so they would fit in the cavity for P90s. And then humbuckers kind of went around and went crazy. But if you're looking for a different flavor, different style in a Les Paul, I highly recommend either of these. P90s, I really think you need a noise gate. They can be a little noisy, especially depending on your lighting that's in the room. Fluorescents are horrible. And there's a lot of bite to them. So if you're using them with like a lot of distortion or anything like that, there's a lot of grit. And with a noise gate, that's really can get you a tone that you can't get with a humbucker, or it's hard to get with a humbucker. And as well, you can get really fat and creamy tones. The mini humbuckers, on the other hand, people hate these, or they absolutely love them. The mini humbuckers on a Les Paul, they can come across as a little shrill. There's a lot of high end to them. So there's a lot of benefit if you want to roll back on the volume a little or roll back on your tone to kind of bring down that top end. Personally, I don't understand all of the hate. Absolutely love it. Between these two guitars here and my Les Paul Custom, day of the week kind of deal, all three of them are my favorite. I kind of just jump between all three of them. So next up, I want to talk about the different models. So they do vary from year to year, so your weight relief and your neck profiles can actually change from model to model. But there's something currently that these two guitars have in common, and that's they do not come with hard shell cases. They come with gig bags or the kind of thicker padded bag. Both of them are great choices, but if you're like me and you prefer having hard shell cases, if you're going to buy either of these guitars, figure in a little extra money for either a Gibson hard shell case, or if you want to save half the money, just a regular Les Paul shaped hard shell case. Now these two guitars here also have another thing in common other than the gig bags. They're on the lower end of the kind of budget scale. So this is a tribute series and this is a studio series. Basically, the tribute series are all satin nitro finishes, whereas the studio is the first model that comes with the nitro gloss finish. Personally, I prefer the gloss finish on them. I used to own a studio that was over lacquered, and it was very annoying, but if you just clean it with your sleeve, it's fine. Here we also have a Les Paul Classic. Now, the Les Paul Classics generally come with humbuckers and the 9-hole weight relief. This one here was I don't know, they just changed it up for the year, so it had P90s and no weight relief. The Classics, Standards, and Traditionals, and Deluxes when they actually make them, they all have binding on the neck and binding on the body. This is a Les Paul Custom. The Les Paul Custom also has binding on the neck, binding on the headstock, binding on the top of the body, and binding on the back of the body. The binding is also feels a little recessed. I absolutely love that. One other thing that you have to be very aware of if you're purchasing a used Les Paul is there are a lot of fakes out there. This is not a fake, I don't own a fake, but if you actually look up the Chibsons, as they're called, so the Chinese-made fake Gibsons, some of those are very convincing. So you really have to do your research. If you're purchasing a guitar online, make sure you ask for a ton of pictures and as well the serial number. There's a serial number lookup system that you can actually go through to see when it was made, and you can compare things like if it's a 70s Les Paul, it's going to have a volute on the back of it. Just different things that you have to be aware of, because if you're spending a lot of money on a guitar, you don't want to be had and buy a fake. And the last thing I want to talk about here is I have a 99 Gibson and an 88 Gibson Les Paul. Usually when you see guitars, like if you're buying a Flying V, you're usually going to see some dings like in the fins and stuff like that. You can see that with Les Pauls. But the older ones, they're not as devalued as much when there's some cosmetic, I wouldn't say issues with it, but cosmetic use. So basically, on the back of this 88 Les Paul Custom, you can actually see that part of the finish is starting to come off. That doesn't mean that there was any like deficiencies in the manufacturing or anything like that. It just means it's been well played and well loved. Also on the back of it, it's kind of hard to see, and on the front, there's a little bit of checking in the finish. There's a nice patina on the back of the headstock, as I noticed that the headstock's out of frame. But a lot of people would actually say that because it's naturally done from kind of like over the years of playing and stuff like that, actually increases the value of the Les Paul. I also have a 99 Les Paul Deluxe, which kind of hard to see. I'll see if I can get a close-up going. But you can see that there's major checking on the headstock. Now that's kind of normal for this model and of that age. And again, it's not like a defect in manufacturing or anything like that. It's just something that happens naturally over time. Doesn't mean that a pristine one is worth less or more. It's just not something that's thought of as like if you're buying a Flying V of any sorts that has a whole bunch of chips and dings on the fins because it's been nailed into a door a whole bunch of times. Alright, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it if you made it all the way through this video. I do have this here. I'm not going to talk about it. Especially, I mean, this is just a tribute series, and I just got it because I wanted an SG, and it's worked because now I want to get the 61 standard SG, and yeah, I already ordered the Les Paul truss rod cover for it because I'm a nerd. Anyway, thanks again for watching. If you want to comment about this saying, why didn't you talk about this and all that stuff or whatever, you can go ahead and leave it in the comments. Just keep an eye open because I'll probably end up doing an SG and should you buy one. But I feel like I have to have a couple of SGs before I do that. Thanks for watching.